Tre Tipton is an Emmy Award winning protagonist from Apollo, Pennsylvania. Tre Tipton has served as a wide receiver for the University of Pittsburgh from 2015 to 2021. Tipton's skills on the field gained him many awards, including the Wilma Rudolph Student Athlete Achievement Award and the 2021 Disney Spirit Award, which is given to the most inspiring college football athlete. During his tenure at Pitt, Tipton earned a bachelor's degree in communications as well as a master's degree in social work. Also a champion of mental health, Tipton founded a peer group to support peer Pitt students, athletes in their experiences of overcoming adversity, called LOVE, Love, or Living Out Victoriously Every Day. That organization led Tre to create a 7v7 football program called the PA Goblins, which embarked on the same values that helped many students at the University of Pittsburgh. Now the director of business development at One Team Media, Tre is embarking on a journey to help people tell their story. Most recently, Tre works for One Team Media as the director of business development and sales, and he's a podcaster. In his free time, Tre serves as a motivational speaker who has served over 30 plus schools across the country, focusing on the topic of mental health. So we're so very excited and honored to have a conversation with you and really just kind of dig into your lived experience and how your journey has shaped you into the person you are. So we're excited and we're happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me. Can you guys hear me good?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
can hear
perfect.
you.
Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the introduction. I'm nobody special, man. I just try to be a neighborhood superhero. So I appreciate you guys and the incredible introduction. But I appreciate you guys for having me, and I'm thankful that you're giving me a chance to share my story.
Yeah, yep,
Absolutely.
yep. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
All right, sounds good. So I'm a small town kid from Apollo, PA. You know what I mean? I like to tell people I lived everywhere and nowhere all at the same time, simply just because we moved so much growing up. My story kind of starts with trauma leading first, and the reason why I say trauma leading first, I really don't know a time period in my life where I didn't feel some sense of strong trauma, right? I experienced my first ever piece of death at the age of 7. And in that experience, I learned a lot about myself because I can remember vividly on what that moment felt like, right? And it became the first experience where I actually kind of start to flirt with the idea of death. I was about 7 years old, and I'll never forget the day. And I remember it very vividly. My dad had told me early that morning to go upstairs and to go see my stepmother to make sure that she was okay for breakfast. And I remember going upstairs, and when I seen her body, something didn't seem right. Like it didn't seem like she was breathing, it didn't seem like she was moving or anything. And I remember touching her body, and her body remained cold. I had that same thought process, mindset slash dream for about 7 years because I was constantly having the same bad dream of that same
Mhm.
exact moment. And in that moment, I remember running downstairs and screaming to my dad, something's not right, something's wrong, right? And my father runs upstairs and he gets into a space where he's like, you could tell it's eerie. It's not really a great time. My father's crying, he's screaming, and he comes downstairs screaming even more, saying, she's dead, somebody call the ambulance. And I remember being about 7 years old, not really understanding what's going on. As they brought her down the gurney, I vividly remember her head turning towards me as they dropped her head down on the gurney. It like bounced off the step, and I remember her head and what it looked like, and it bothered me because I had that same exact dream from when I was about 7 years old until I was about 14, which led me to not go to school for like my whole first grade year. Now, during that time process, I began to really think to myself, like, it didn't make sense to me on how death could just come to people so quickly. And I felt like everybody that I loved or cared about was getting into a position of possibly dying, right? And at a young age, you don't really understand that. So you begin to put pressure on yourself in ways that I genuinely just didn't understand at that age. So I ran away. I ran away for 2 days. My dad was arrested and falsely accused of murder. Um, and it sent me, right? It put me in a very bad space and allowed me to spiral a little bit. And in those moments, I started to recognize things in myself. I started to realize I would glorify the thought of death, right? Because after seeing her and seeing the situation, I didn't feel like anybody can get too close to me because if they did, they would slowly pass away. See, fast forward, I end up not having my dad in my life for about 2 to 3 years due to the fact that they accused him of killing my stepmother, and it came to find out that she had overdosed by her own hand. And it killed me because my dad was constantly looked at in my community as a negative guy and as a bad guy. And when it came out that he was falsely identified, it was made me happy, but it put me in a space of despair because I didn't really understand on why the community was bashing my father so badly. And as time went on, I started to feel this sense of hate, like I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't exist. Fast forward, right? I go on about my life. I was about third grade at that time, and I go on about my life, and I get to about that sixth grade, seventh grade era, and my life starts to change rapidly. I'm a good athlete, but the whole time I'm running away from my trauma, it's all through sports because I feel like nothing else really truly understands me. So when I get that opportunity to stay away from the traumas that I was facing, I would take full advantage by just staying in the moment of playing that sport. Well, getting into about my sixth grade year, my Uncle Richard was actually the person who kind of changed my life because up to that point, I was a little bit of a bad kid, right? Doing things I didn't really understand and just doing it just for the sake of doing it, okay? Because I genuinely felt this hurt, this pain, this misunderstanding of life, right? To the point where I was just wanted everything to go away. I wanted everything to be separate from where I was, and I wanted to disappear. Then my Uncle Richard grabbed me, and my Uncle Richard was the person who told me that I actually had an opportunity to play Division I football. He said, "I seen your talent. I seen how amazing you are, and you could be very special." And I remember taking that in, right? And as a young kid, right, our brains are very vulnerable and very pliable, right? That still has a chance to be molded and to make it into something that's strong, right? And my uncle was one of those people who he would constantly put pressure, right? Put pressure on the fact that you could be great. And I never understood it because at first I just felt like he was always just pushing me too hard, and it didn't really make sense on why he cared about me playing sports so much. But as time went on, I started to stop. I stopped acting like a bad kid and started to focus more on sports, and I could really start to see the value in what my uncle was saying. And he was telling me, he was like, "Take a chance, take a chance, take a chance." And I never took a chance until he passed away. And when he passed away, I started to flirt with this idea: anybody who would get too close to me would die. Fast forward, moving to my seventh grade year, I end up losing a cousin of mine to street violence. And I'm starting to realize that I'm not really liking the person that I'm starting to become because these thoughts are starting to eat at me. These thoughts every day, I'm sitting there with myself, asking myself a question: why am I alive? Why has God chosen me to stick around when all these people that I love and care about are consistently passing away around me? I didn't understand it. Fast forward, we move into about my eighth grade year, and I'm trying to put myself in a position to genuinely just be understood, right? Playing sports, putting myself in different spaces, hanging out with different crowds, and just wanting to see on who would actually accept me, right? I was always an outcast, always a nomad, but I was the type of kid who would never let you know it. So as time went on, I just began to really put all my heart into playing the game, right? Everything that I could possibly think of was about sports, right? If it was school, if I was going to school, it's because of sports. If I was doing anything, it was because of sports, because I had this dream that had been created by my uncle, but also had was being lived out by me. So I started going really hard, right? Because during about my middle school years, I was doing a lot of negative things, right? Doing things that I wouldn't agree with, that my mother wouldn't agree with, and it low-key disappointed my mom. And I remember wanting to make that change and making that turnaround. I remember making my mom a promise that I would get her the house, the car, the yacht, and everything in between that she could possibly imagine because I was going to get a Division I scholarship. I was going to go to the league. Fast forward, we get into our ninth grade year, and my mom is diagnosed with a heart problem. And I vividly remember being the only person in the hospital with my mother, and the doctor saying to me, either your mother's going to survive this or she's not. Now imagine, right, a young kid who's already dealt with death in multiple different ways. His stepmother passes away at a young age, and then on top of that, his uncle passes away, and then his cousin passes away. I'm losing simply my mind, right? And as the doctor is telling me this, I still can't believe it because this is my mom, this is my queen, this is the person who taught me how to be a king. It doesn't make sense. Doc. He said she's either going to be fine or she's not, and lo and behold, with a lot of prayer, my mom ended up being fine. Fast forward, we get into my 10th grade year, I found out that my dad has a brain aneurysm. And as I'm rushing to the hospital, I keep thinking to myself, like, anybody who gets close to me is gonna pass away. This is the result of my trauma and how much it was starting to beat on me.
Mhm.
And as time went on, I started to realize that every chance that I got to prove myself right, I tried to. So we fast forward into my junior year, and I lose two people in 1 week. My close friend Bubba, he died in a car crash that was so bad that they had to have a closed casket because his head was 300 yards from his body. And I remember just being so upset because I was like, what did he deserve to do that? Then on Thursday, I lose my aunt to another car crash. So it just seemed like there were so many different things pulling, and I began to feed myself these lies through depression that anybody that I cared about, anybody that I got close to would pass away. And during that time process, I didn't have a lot of time to grieve because at that time I was the celebrity of the school, right? I was the top athlete. I was the guy who always made sure that everybody else was okay. So much so that my principal called me down to the office to help support the other kids who were friends with Bubba. But during that time process, I not yet had the opportunity to grieve, not yet had the opportunity to pour my cup into somebody else because I didn't know how. This wasn't a time period where mental health was considered quote unquote cool, right? We're talking about your emotions and talking about the things that you were going through wouldn't be considered something that you would do as a man during that time period. So I held everything in. And as I held everything in, see, my cup started to fill up to a point where I was overflowing. I was doing things that I didn't understand, right? Doing things that I didn't agree with, but because I was in so much pain, it just felt like the easiest way to get the pain to go away. Fast forward, I'm still trying to go through life and I'm fighting for my life, right? And I'm fighting for the opportunity to go to school. Everything seems perfect because I'm one of the top athletes in all of the state, but my lifestyle is different. See, I'm a kid that moves from the city and then moves to the suburbs and moves to the country. And now I'm in the country. I'm one of three black kids in all of the community. So anytime a black person does anything wrong, I'm one of three suspects. See, I get into this position of thinking that nobody really wants me around. The only reason why they want me around is because I'm an athlete. And the reason why I felt this way is because over time, the same guys who would say racial slurs to me when I was a kid were now the same guys who were shaking my hand because I was getting scholarships from different schools. So for me, it put me in this sense of I had to be a nomad. I had to separate myself because if I felt like if I didn't, right, I would fall victim to racism. Because I would put myself into a situation where I would try to fight somebody or put myself in a situation where I would let them get the best of me. And I knew that I couldn't allow that to happen because my purpose was higher than that moment. So as I was sitting there and I was fighting through these battles, I had my college coach at the time, Paul Chris, reach out to me and saying, Trey, we got to sit down and talk about your scholarship. Now I began to become a little bit nervous because you know when you hear words like that, that sounds like I'm losing my scholarship, right? And what ended up
Right.
happening was I had an opportunity to go play in an all-star basketball game. Thank the Lord that He had blessed me with opportunities to play more sports than just one in high school. And I had received some money that ended up helping out a charity that's around me, but they wanted to make sure I wasn't just accepting money. Well, during that time period, I was dating a young lady, and while dating that young lady, I would surely realize that it wasn't a great relationship. And this is the first time I actually understood what relationships really look like. And you know what that young dumb love looks like, right? When you meet the person by the locker, you know what I mean? Every time you hug them, your leg kicks up in the air. You know what I'm saying? Like it was real,
I've been there.
it was real young and dumb love, but she was also facing her own sense of traumas, right?
Yeah.
Facing her own demons and her own battles. Well, I remember forget it. I was at a football game. I believe it was at the Florida State football game when we played against Jameis Winston. And I remember getting a call from the young lady's mother saying, Trey, we need you to rush to the hospital. And this is where my faith in God had genuinely been kicked in because it's crazy the fact that the young lady was at the hospital in which that we parked at. So now I know that God's speaking to me, but I don't know why and I don't know how. As I'm rushing to the hospital, I tell my cousin Berger, I'm like, yo, we gotta go. You're like, my girl's in the hospital. I come to find out that she overdosed on 40 different pills and a lot of different other abuses. I started really going into it and thinking like, am I the problem? Right? Anybody who gets too close to me passes away. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so then, right, as I'm sitting there, I'm playing this all through my head and I'm rushing and I'm pacing, I'm rushing and I'm pacing and I'm running to get to this hospital. And when I get to this hospital, I meet her other boyfriend. In this moment, I'm crushed, right? Like a person who's not talking about what he's going through, but now I'm trying to be there for everybody else. And now I'm put into a situation that I've never understood and never been in before, right? As a
Right.
young adult, as a young man, just trying to figure out life, but also focused on his dream. Fast forward, she ends up moving on. Now I'm playing with this verse in my head that was a close one because although that was a close one, the reason why there was even a close one in the first place, and this is where trauma comes back in, is because she was too close to me. So I would blame myself for other people's problems. And then on top of that, not only would I blame myself for other people's problems, if something would happen to that person, I would consider it my fault. This is a nasty way to allow trauma to play a role inside your head, right? So as time started to go on, I started to realize that I had a real issue. I couldn't stop flirting with the idea of death, right? Was suicidal since I was 7. Continued to be suicidal until I was about 22. But we'll get a little bit more into that story. So my senior year, right? I was a bad man in as I like to tell people. Hey, listen, I'm one of the old heads. I tell people all the time, I'm one of the old heads. Back in my day, I say it all the time. You know what I mean? Because back in my day, I felt like I was that guy. You know what I'm saying? But with that said, though, right, I had every opportunity in the world, right? Every scholarship, everything that you could think of. I was winning states,
Mm,
but all alone, people didn't really understand what my lifestyle was really, what was really happening in my lifestyle. Like, for example, there was nights that I would go home and we'd have no gas. There's nights where I
mm,
would go home and we would have no water. And I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in an era where we would take bird baths. And a bird bath was essentially if you had gas, right, and you didn't have water, you would get the little bottles of water, you put them in the pot, you warm them up on the
Mm-hmm.
stove, then you take that thing upstairs and you go get a bath real quick, right? Now, with that said, though, I was getting to a point where I would leave practice and I didn't want to be embarrassed. So I would just wait until everybody would leave and I would just shower after school. You know
mm,
what I mean? So I didn't have to go home and shower and come in smelling like the back of a garage. So I wanted to have an opportunity to make sure that I wasn't putting myself in position to be bullied, right? Because I already knew I was the only black kid. So I was like, okay, like, how do I work around this? But
mm,
all along, I'm also a state champion in track. I'm also Post Gazette's All-American. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing all these things. And everybody's looking at it
mm,
as like he's living large, but I'm really dying inside, right?
Right, right.
So during that time process, I'm fighting these demons, but nobody can tell these demons even exist until my freshman year of college. Now, this part of my story is a little bit difficult to talk about because it's not just my trauma, it's also another person's trauma. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I say that is because this is an experience I never thought I would experience, but this experience changed the version of Trey that I knew at that time. And the reason why I said that is because I began dating this young lady who was a gymnast at the University of Pittsburgh. I fell in love with this young lady. We began to do everything right. Again, that goes back to that high school love, you know, when you kicking your foot up, you know what I'm saying? Every time you see him, you smile from a distance, right? You think about what presents they want, all the little cute stuff that you do as a kid, right? Well, coming to find out that her life was a little bit harsher than I had expected, as well as maybe just as harsh as my life was feeling at the time, if not worse. And it was my first ever experience with dealing with somebody that was sordid. And when I say the word sordid, I like to think of somebody who was just very vicious of a human being and disrespectful of a human being. And not saying that this woman was, but what she was going through from the people that she
mm,
was being forced to be going through these situations, the people that she was dealing with was just extremely sordid. And I never experienced somebody go through so much pain but couldn't actually speak up to say something about it, right? Like
mm,
she was going through subconscious pain so much so that when we would lay down and go to sleep together, she would scream in her sleep. And at first, she never said nothing to me, right? But as time would go on, I'm like, Ma, I can't get any rest. Like, why are you screaming in your sleep? It sounded like you're running from something. This part of the story for any woman who's deciding to listen to this story, I understand if this is a little bit difficult because this was also difficult for me to even understand why it was happening. But during this time process, was it right of me to do? No. But I had went through her phone and I had seen some text messages from her father. And her father was sending out these such disturbing messages to this young lady. And it turned out that her father was molesting her as well as her stepmother. They was tying her up and doing some things to her that allowed her to
mm,
have multiple miscarriages.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as feeling like such a low of a man, right? Like I couldn't protect the one thing that I loved and cared about the most. I began to put on myself this that trauma response again, right? Put on myself that it's my fault that she's hurting like this, right? I can't do enough. I'm not doing enough, right? And in those moments, I remember calling the police. I remember doing all these things, working my butt off to give her an opportunity to get away from all this pain, right? And feeling like I still fell short because when she would go home, she would have nowhere else to stay, right? And it was simply because she was dating a black man, right? And she was a white lady, and they were from North Carolina, and her parents didn't accept that. So her biological
mm,
mother kicked her out of the house. The only place that she had to live was with her biological father, who ended up being, as I said before, very disturbing. And I remember being an athlete, and I'm not sleeping. Okay, so practice is at 6 o'clock. I'm not getting to bed until about 4 a.m.
mm,
So in those senses, right, you could see over time on how this could possibly lead to an injury. So during those time processes, I began to start on my team. I'm playing well. I'm doing well. I'm playing behind T-Boy, playing with some really incredible guys who are still in the league right now. But something's still not right because I'm not sleeping and I don't got a lot of time to really heal. Well. as time went on, things got hectic, and I began to become very suicidal of a human, right? I've always been suicidal, but I never had made attempts on my life.
Mm,
It wasn't until this period of time that I realized that I no longer wanted to be living because ultimately, anytime anybody was really talking to me from my family at that time, it felt like, it may not be true, but it felt like that they were only asking me for tickets. In those experiences, I got into a very dark place, right? Because I remember me and her tried very hard at a very young age. Can I say that it's right now? Probably would not. I would never tell somebody to do this, but we tried for a baby. Well, she had gotten pregnant, but unfortunately, because of the situations that were happening with her father, she had gotten to a space where she couldn't take it anymore. She tried to kill herself.
mm,
I remember getting the call from her aunt, and by the way, her aunt didn't like me either. And in those moments, I just remember her telling me to sit down. And when she told me to sit down, immediately I began to breathe hard. And when I heard what she would say next, I remember just my feet, my body, and my soul leaving my body. And then she was just like, Trey, I don't know how to tell you this, but the baby's gone.
mm.
Mm.
And again, you see how it goes back to that play of everybody who gets
Yeah.
close to me
The cycle.
dies.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see the cycle. So during
Mm-hmm.
that time process, she was fighting for her life. I lost my baby. In my head, I'm going insane. I just need to end my life so nobody else gets hurt.
Mm,
So as time is going on, I remember watching the football game, and mind you, I had gotten hurt during practice because I wasn't sleeping. I barely was eating because I was dealing with these problems of a girl who was literally dealing with the world. And during that time process, I had gotten hurt. And I just remember watching a football game where the guy that was behind me is now playing and he scores a touchdown. Now, mind you, this is the only space that I have a safe haven is my sports. Now that I no longer have that safe haven, I feel destroyed because the guy who was behind me is now making plays in front of me and I have nowhere to run to. All of my safe haven, everything that I really put and indulge my time into, indulge my life into, is now taken from me. So now as I'm sitting there watching the game, I remember blacking out. And I was upstairs. Now, mind you, I'm in a cast essentially, right? An air cast. So for me to even get upstairs on crutches and me to black out and not remember how, I was like, something's not right.
mm,
Then I'd black out again. Now I'm at the knife drawer and I'm like, this makes sense. And I remember reaching into the knife drawer, right? And putting it up to my wrist and couldn't cut my wrist and then putting it up to my throat and then deciding this isn't right. After I put the knife down and put it back in the drawer, my aunt walked in the house 10 minutes later.
mm,
Mm.
And it put fear into me, right? You would think that would be the end, but it wouldn't be the end. It put fear into me because I realized I was like, she could have seen me. So
mm,
then we fast forward into my second attempt. See, now I'm in a position where I'm hurting because I see that this woman is hurting. I'm still not sleeping. I'm hurt, right? I'm injured. I'm not sleeping. My woman is being terrorized by her family. And on top of that, I can't protect nobody. I can't even protect myself. I'm failing in school. My family don't know anything. I just lost my child. I'm drowning. Can you tell? And in those moments, as I was drowning, I started to look at myself in the mirror and say, I just don't want to be here anymore. And I remember grabbing scissors in my room and trying to cut my wrist and just couldn't do it. And then there was a
mm,
knock on my door. It ended up being my girlfriend at the time. And I would never forget these words because it changed my life. I remember her seeing me. I remember her seeing me with the scissors in my hand and her grabbing the scissors out of my hand and saying, if you're gonna kill yourself, I'm gonna do it first. And she cut her wrist right in front of me. She cut her
mm,
wrist so deeply to the point where it didn't even bleed. And when I realized on how terrible it actually was, I immediately ran around at that time my dormitory just asking anybody for help. I remember getting two rags. One rag was for to put, I folded it and I put it on her wrist for compression. The
mm,
other one I cut and I tied it as tight as I could and I carried her the whole way to Presby Hospital. And when I got there, it was my first ever actual experience with systematic racism. And the reason why I
mm,
say that is because when I got there, the first thing that they asked me was, what did you do?
mm,
Mm.
And it hit me and it brought tears to my eyes because this is the woman that I love, right? And you're assuming that I did something to her to harm her. And they
mhm,
asked me that same question about 5 to 10 times, and I never will forget how much hatred I had in my heart. And I never want to use the word hate, but I was in so much pain because this is the woman that I love, but you're assuming that I did something wrong. And in that moment, you would think that I would get very clear-headed, like, Trey, we shouldn't be doing this. It wouldn't be over. See, my third attempt would end up being that as I'm going to practice, I'm realizing that nobody's paying attention to me. So let's talk about this subject, right? When you're an injured athlete in the time and process of
Mhm.
sport, right? Now that the sport's becoming more of a business, it's not that coaches don't want to pay attention to you. They just don't have the time to because reality sets in, right? In order for them to get paid, they must win football games. In order for them to win football games, you have to be healthy. And if you're not healthy, what do we have to do with you?
Mhm.
So in those moments, I found myself very alone. So now football is not going well. I shouldn't be here. I have this thought process of wanting to kill myself over and over and over again. I lost my child. Life is getting harder. It's getting harder. It's getting harder. It's getting harder. It's getting harder. Then it just goes silent. And when I say it goes silent, my fourth and final attempt would be the one that would change my life. And I remember walking, I don't know if you guys understand Pitt, the university's campus, all like that, but I remember walking from Sutherland Hall the whole way to a bridge right next to Heinz Field. And I'll forever say Heinz Field. I don't care what anybody says, that accuracy stuff's not gonna work with me. Um, but I couldn't forget it, man. I'll never forget it. I remember getting to the bridge and just looking over at the dark water and just being like,
Mm.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay here. And as we would sit there for a little bit, I remember just feeling sweaty, right? And extremely uncomfortable. Then I remember just climbing over the other side to the bridge and just looking down at the water and saying, it's okay. It's okay. And when I slipped, I grabbed myself and I just remember feeling this sense of fear, right?
Mm.
And realizing I felt like something was talking to me in my subconscious saying that you're not ready to die yet. And immediately I started to play my mom's face in my head. I started to play my family's faces in my head, like as if I didn't see them the whole time I was going through depression.
Mm.
And in that moment, I realized I wasn't ready to die yet. And when I climbed back over to the opposite side of the bridge, back to where the concrete was, I remember telling myself and screaming out loud and like in tears, like I'm tired of losing to myself.
Mm.
Because here's the thing with depression, man, depression just doesn't go away. It's not something that you could just you flick the light on and all the darkness just happens to go
Mhm.
away. Right? This is something that you got to work at. It's hard work. Like it's
Mhm.
not what people misconstrued about happiness and positivity that it's easy. If you think positivity and being happy in the world that we currently live in is easy, then you got another thing coming. So you got to work for
Mhm.
your positivity. And in those moments,
Mhm.
I screamed to myself. I told myself, I said, I'll never lose to me again because I knew that I wasn't ready to die. But I told myself, I don't care what I got to do. I don't care how hard I got to do. I don't care if it's going to take me to the edges of the world. I will never lose to me again. And after making that statement, things did not get easier. Like, if anything, them things got harder. I feel like I told the devil exactly what I was about to do. And at that
Mm.
point, he was just like, all right, let me start lifting. So, like, in that moment, it changed everything because although I had fought myself out of the position of no longer being suicidal, doesn't mean the thoughts didn't still come around. Right?
Right.
Like I still had to fight and battle through those thoughts. I still had to fight and battle through that depression. I still had to fight and battle through that anxiety and remind myself and find different ways to cope. I went through five different counselors before I found my actual one. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I was out there fighting for my life. And when I say fighting for my life, I tell people all the time the most wisest thing that I ever heard from any given man was this. He was a boxer. The old man told me, he said straight up, he said, Trey, let me teach you something. And we were joking around. It was a funny statement, but this what literally saved my life and still sits with me. He said to me, he said, life's a fight. He said, tuck your chin, put your hands up, and excuse my language, fucking swing.
Mm.
And when he said that, it knocked me off of my feet because I'm sitting here thinking, like, no matter what you go through, you're going to go through something. That's a guarantee,
Mhm.
right? But when you realize that you're capable and you're able to fight, right? Or if you feel like you're not able to fight, find ways to get equipped. Right? So I went and got a counselor. I went and found different ways to actually take care of myself and found different things that allowed me to feel healed within myself for me to take one step forward. So I would constantly challenge myself, constantly try to push myself. But like I told you guys, right? Although those things happened in my freshman year, times did not get easier, they got harder. We fast forward to my sophomore year, and after all those things had happened, life is starting to finally clear up. But this is the crazy part. Although things were starting to clear up, life didn't stop happening. Life didn't stop coming. And as things started to continue to happen for me and in front of me, I began to realize that God had a bigger plan for me. I had an opportunity to really become a good baller again. Right? I told myself, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna dog everybody. I'm gonna go out here and train my butt off. I'm gonna become the best version of myself that I could possibly
Mhm.
become so I can be the best version I can be on the field. Lo and behold, I had the best season of my career. Um, did a great job, came in and filled in for an amazing athlete in Dantes Ford, and was able to go out there and do things that I remember myself doing when I was in high school. So it felt good to be back out there and being myself. Well, November 24th, 2016, I got hit so hard that the doctors told me I had a better chance in a car crash.
Mm.
So here's the funny part of the story, and I laugh at this part of the story every time. And the reason why I laugh at it is because it's the honest to God truth. So what people don't know about college football is that college coaches lie. A lot. You know what I mean? Like somewhat too much. And the reason why I say this is because they have this one thing where they like to tell kids, if you don't like the play, we'll throw it out. Like Maury said, that too is a lie. And the reason why I say that's a lie is the fact that there was a play where my friend Jordan Whitehead, also my roommate, every time I would catch the ball, he'd run past me and say, "Ooh, you're lucky." Now I'm sitting here thinking in my head, he likes me. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is my roommate. He cares about me. The dude in the game ain't gonna care nothing about me. Right? So I went back and I told my coach, I said, Coach, this play ain't gonna work. You know what I'm saying? Like we gotta we gotta figure something out. You know what I'm saying? So come to the game, Dantes Ford comes back, he's back in health, but he gets injured in the game again. They said, Trey, you're up. And guess what play they call? They called the play that I told them not to call,
Mhm.
right? And I remember looking, and I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, looking at the quarterback, I'm like, please, Lord God, if there's more than two people around me, please do not let this man throw this football. I remember making my move. I read the coverage perfectly. I genuinely believe I did. But here's the problem. There was a guy on the opposite side of the field that looked like an avatar. And the reason why I say that is this man was 6'4", 215
Mm.
pounds, and ran a 4.340. And there was nothing that was slowing this man down from destroying my body. Now,
Mm.
what happened is the fact that I looked back at the quarterback, right? And I remember I'm running my route and I'm starting to count. I'm like, okay, there's one guy behind me. I made a move on a second guy. And then I look across the field and here comes the avatar. And I'm sitting here and I'm laughing and I'm just like, there's no way my quarterback's looking at me. I'm like, we talked about this. Like, there's no way he's staring at me, right? I look back at the quarterback and this man ain't looking at no one else. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh man, this is really about to go down. So he's got to make a
Mhm.
decision. So then he throws the ball. So now I'm like, oh yeah, this might not be good, right? So now it's a game time decision. And I can't lie to you. I was sitting there thinking in my head, do I go up and get the ball or do I protect myself?
Mhm.
I'm like, nah, don't be soft. Go get it. So I go get it, right? And the guy behind me holds me there as I just call him the Avatar just because that man was probably the strongest man I've ever seen in my entire life. And he just, when I say he hit me so hard that he knocked me unconscious. And I just remember
Mm.
rolling over on the ball. And when I woke up, I thought my wrist was broken. But then
Mm.
again, I couldn't breathe because when he hit me that hard, naturally I lost all the air in my system. And I'm just thinking
Mm.
he just knocked the wind out of me. I'm like, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be all right.
Mm.
And I realized that the wind wasn't coming back. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, this ain't right. And they took me in the back. We got all the x-rays. They said I was fine. So I went back out there and played.
Mm.
Halftime came, and one of my teammates, Rara Rujo Lopes, he was like, Trey, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm good, bro. I'm talking to him just like this. And he's like, something don't feel right. Go see Doc. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm good. And then he calls Doc over, and Doc calls me over. Now, granted, we all went to school here, correct? With that said, a 4 out of 5 is what, a B plus? You would say it's about a B plus, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was 5 doctors. 4 out of the 5 doctors said I was fine, but one doctor had a bad feeling.
Mm.
So this one doctor said he was like, Trey, everybody says you're fine, but I just got a bad feeling about this. We just want to send you to the hospital. If you're fine, we'll get you back over here. I'm like, you know what? I got a feeling this is another one of those lies y'all keep telling me, but I'm gonna jump in this ambulance and see what happens.
Mm.
So I jump in the ambulance and I just remember pulling up to the hospital. And I don't know if you guys have had an x-ray, but an x-ray typically to get your results takes about 2 hours, right? Man, this was the fastest X-ray I've ever seen in my entire life. This man came in, did the X-ray, left, and came right back. Immediately, as soon as he came right back, I was like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
told he told me he was like, "We got to put you under." I'm like, "What's up, doc? Why?" He was like, "If we don't put you under, you could possibly die." I said, "Huh?" He said, "If we don't put you under, you could possibly die." He said, "You're blessed to be here, son. If you'd have stayed at the football game, there's a chance you'd have died in the third quarter. And if you'd have made it through the whole game and you'd have got on that airplane, there'd have been no saving you." And he was like, "Sign this document just in case you don't wake up." And I'm
Mm.
like, "What?" He said, "Sign this document just in case you don't wake up." Signed a document, and then they put me under. And when I woke up, I had a tube in my chest, pumping like air into my chest to help all the blood circulate because I had too much blood pulling my lung down. And I just remember the amount of pain I was in, right? I thought my arm
Mm.
was cut off. That's how much pain I was in. I was delusional, but like it genuinely felt like my arm was cut off because the pain was shooting from the top of my forehead down to my toes. And I could
Mm.
feel it the whole way through my spine because what they had to do was they had to dislocate my rib cage to put the tube inside of my rib cage to even get into my lung.
Mm.
So on that rib cage, there's a whole bunch of just neurons and multiple other things that sit on along those ribs, right? So like when you feel all those nerves and neurons all being cut into and cut through, it's hard to breathe. But what I had not realized though, and how crazy the situation actually was. So this nurse that I had getting into the next morning, I remember this nurse, and what he said to me was, he was like, "Listen here, young fella." He said, "You got a breathing apparatus right next to you. I'm gonna show you how to do it." He showed me how to do it. In my head, I'm like, "Oh, this is a breeze, right?" He said, "You got enough blood in your chest that if you don't get it out by tomorrow morning, at least a quarter of it, you're gonna go into a coma." I said, "Sir,
Mm.
I just woke up. I ain't trying to go back to sleep." He started laughing, and I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay. So we get into my freshman year, and I'm trying to kill myself, and now I'm in my sophomore year, and my life is out of my hands.
Mm. Mm.
I said, "What you gonna do, Trey? You gonna go back to the person that you said that you would never be again?"
Right. Right.
And I remember just being tested. I remember looking up into at the ceiling and being like, okay, if this is a challenge, then bet. Let's get to it. And in that moment, I finally felt like I was healed. Because as much as the kid was playing with his life the year before, now his life is out of his hands. And now I got a bigger smile on my face than what I did when I was not healed.
Right.
Right. And I remember telling myself, I'm going to compound interest. I'm going to compound on my positivity. I don't care what it takes, how painful it is. I'm going to do whatever it takes in order for me to be able to compound interest on my positivity. What does that look like? I said, every day I'm gonna make one of these nurses smile because you gotta understand that I was the most healthiest person inside of this ICU. The guy right next to me, he got hit by a train and survived. The guy diagonal from me got shot in the side of his Adam's apple. And the guy right across from me was in a car accident. I was the healthiest one in that place with a smile on my face, right? But what I noticed was the nurse, every single nurse that came through always had smiles on their faces. I took something from it. I said, if they can do it, I can do it, right?
Mm.
Mhm.
Mm.
So it got to a
Mhm.
point where I was like, I told myself I'm not going to lose to myself. So how are we going to battle back? So in that moment, I found myself talking to these people while they were sleeping all the time. Probably made me a little psycho, be honest, a little bit. Now that I think about it, saying it out loud, probably wasn't the most sane thing to do, but I was having full-blown conversations with these people because I had no one else to talk to. And in that time process, I started to look at myself in a different light. I'm like, Trey, we can do this, right? They're telling me I can't play football for a full year. I said, bet that. Watch this, right? I came back in 5 months. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like I pushed myself to a limit, which it felt like every time things got hard, I was like, you know what? It's okay. I can battle back. We fast forward into my junior year, right? We have a decent season into my junior year. I'm like, this is my year. Everybody's telling me this is my year, right? I finally get a chance to give my mom the house, the car, the boat, everything in between. Because they said once I do this year and do it the way I'm supposed to, I'm going to the league. In that moment, I'm like, okay, it's my time. So I train harder than I've ever trained, right? And in that moment, when I train harder than I ever trained, something bad happens.
Mm.
Mm.
See, I ended up tearing everything in my left knee to the point where the only thing I didn't tear was the artery. And in that
Mm.
moment, I'm starting to think, I'm like, okay, is this football thing really for me? Because it feels like every chance that I got to ever go into the league is now gone.
Right.
And I remember being in so much pain, having so many tears and so much fear. And I remember telling myself, I said you were going to compound interest. So now that you're being tested, what you going to do, Trey? You going to revert back to what you said you wasn't going to do? And it felt like every time I would sit there and tell myself I'm all right, it felt like something bigger would happen. You know what I'm saying? And every single time that something bigger would happen, I'd have to find a way to get back up and battle back. Well, in that moment, I created an organization called Love, Center for Living Out Victoriously Every Day. What I wanted to do was I realized that I wasn't the only student athlete that was going through all this pain. There was no way, no how, right? I realized there was a lot of other student athletes who would face the same situations and the same altercations that I would face, right? With coaches, but also with injury. So I was like, you know what? I got to pull us together. We got to have a conversation. We got to talk about this. We ended up helping over 456 student athletes with depression and anxiety through community. I was very extremely blessed because that saved me. Because going from the kid that I knew I was going to the league to now not having anything after already everything I had been through,
Mhm.
I was destroyed. But to have that community meant everything to me. As much as it felt like I was helping them, they were actually really helping me. And that changed my life because it changed my vision on who I would become. My identity was no longer just in the sport. My identity was in Christ. My identity was as in being a superhero to my community. My identity was being a man that I was very invested into, right? And that made me a better football player at the end. But like I said, when times get easier, they would just get harder.
Mm-hmm.
See, that following year, right? Although I had torn my ACL, I was in a mode of I'm gonna come back better than I ever had before. But unfortunately, me and my coach had a falling out, so he didn't start me at all going into my senior year. Because he didn't start me at all my senior year, that granted me a fifth year. And that being able to have that fifth year and being able to compete, I was very thankful and very blessed. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take full advantage of this.
Right.
And going into that fifth year, I'm a starter again, right? Went through everything, battled back, and I get into my third game and I pop my knee again and something doesn't feel right. Go to the doctor. The doctor tells me, Trey, your season's over. You tore your ACL again. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, all right. I remember getting on the phone and screaming with my mom, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. It's over, it's over, it's over. They grant me a 6 year, right? This is unheard of. They're like, 6 years, you're old at this point. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take it. But remind you, I still got a rehab, right?
Right.
Well, then COVID happens. And when COVID happens, right, I have nowhere to rehab. So I'm doing all my rehab by myself, and I end up having so much scar tissue in my left knee that I end up having to put myself through some crazy pain.
Mhm.
Um, so there was so much scar tissue that my knee was stuck kind of like my elbow is. You see how my arm looks like an L?
Mm-hmm.
My leg was stuck like that because there was so much scar tissue. So I remember getting a towel, right? Putting it in my mouth, biting down the towel, grabbing a 45-pound weight, putting my foot on the chair and pushing my knee through all that scar tissue. When I
Mhm.
tell you by far that was the most painful thing I've ever done to myself, it was like
Mhm.
self-torture. But as I would feel all the scar tissue pop, right, I would get nervous
Right.
because I'm like my ACL tore again every time, right? But when I would tell you the amount of popping, right, that you would feel in your own knee,
Mhm.
right, it was disturbing because in order for me to do what I say I wanted to do, I really had to go and put myself through some real life pain, right? And I battled, right? End up playing that whole year, thankfully no injury. But like I said, the times get easier. No, they only got harder, but I got stronger. Going
Mhm.
into my seventh year, that same woman that I told you that I would get the house, the car, the boat, the yacht, and everything in between would die. 2021, June 12th of 2021, my mom passes away.
Mhm.
I remember telling myself I'm done with football. There's no reason for me to play anymore. I'm done. And as I'm an only child, right, I'm going into a space where I'm only doing everything by myself. I'm setting up the funeral, I'm setting up the viewing, and all the while I'm going to school, all
Mhm.
the while I'm running an organization, all the while I'm trying to be somebody and I'm losing my mind, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And all the things that we talked about, right? Compounding interest on your positivity, doing all these things, as much as it's there, it's out the door, right? Like you're telling me my superhero's gone? Are you serious?
Right.
And as I believed that I was on my knees and on my hands, right? And we're at the funeral, I look up and my entire football team is at the funeral during COVID year.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I absolutely couldn't believe it. In that moment, I was like, wow, we got to go back. That year, we had an incredible year. And I remember at the ACC championship, a couple of my teammates came up to me like, yo, Trey, we're doing this for your mom. And I broke down in tears, right? Broke down.
Mhm.
Ugly crying, you know what I'm saying? Like real ugly crying, like Hallmark ugly
Yeah.
crying. You know what I'm saying? So like we win the game, man. I just remember looking up at the sky and saying, thank you, mama, right? Like and everything that we had battled through, right? And with times get easier, no, they would only get harder, right? Because at the end of the day, I started to realize that everything that I was going through was necessary. See,
Mhm.
you can't find success without a little bit of pain, right? One
Right.
of my closest friends taught me this, right? They say, what did he say? He said, when you take pain, you add some, what did he say? He said, when you take pain and you add some purpose, it equals power.
Mm.
And when I thought about it, I was like, okay, it can't get any harder, right? Fast forward on my 26th birthday, I found out that I'm adopted. My whole life changes.
Mm.
And as I look back, I tell you this and I say this to you out loud. I only found this out 3 years ago. But in that moment, I realized when times get easier, no, I would just continue to get stronger. And see, I would fight for my positivity. See, I would learn on what it means to be positive. Because I feel like people don't really understand what it means to be positive, especially when they talk
Yeah.
about mental health. When they talk about mental health, they see mental health as mental illness. It doesn't really add up. And the reason why I
Mhm.
say it doesn't add up is because the same thing with physical health. You know when somebody's physically fit and physically unfit. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with your mental health. What are you doing to mentally weightlift?
Right.
Are you taking care of yourself, right? Do you go through interventions with yourself? Do you go through interventions with your counselor? Are you taking time for yourself? Are you reading? Right? All these things go into your mental fitness. So inside of that, I
Mhm.
started to realize I was like, okay, Trey, well, if anything, I'm not going to be the victim in this game.
Yeah.
And my coach looked at me. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm not going to be a victim in this game." See, here's the thing about mental health. I love the fact that every community is starting to be able to see mental health, right? But what I cannot stand is the victim mentality. See, if you went through something and you're dying on your shield for you to even be able to get up in the morning, you're not a victim, you're a warrior.
Oh, yes.
See,
Warrior.
you decided to get up. You decided to wake up. Do you know how many people who don't?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I began to realize I was like, nah, I'm not gonna let myself be the victim here. See, I fought too hard up to this point. After every time I was hurt, I came back and I played. I had a life-threatening injury and I came back and played for another 4 years. That doesn't happen by chance. It happens by one, God, and it happens two, by grit, and it happens three, because I'm willing to fight. Like I told you, that quote actually made sense. And when it made sense, it really made sense to me because life really is a fight. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't control what happens to you. You only can control how you react. So you better be a
Yeah.
good counterpuncher. And I realized that I was like, okay, well, what am I gonna have to do? I'm gonna have to tell myself every day I'm a king. I'm gonna have to remind myself of the goals that we have, right? I'm gonna have to tell people that I love them because you don't know how long you have with them. I tell my friends all the time I love them. I don't care if it's a man or a female. You won't have to hear it from me. You can be as mad as you want to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
because ultimately we never know when our time is called, right? But I know
Yeah.
when my time is called, it's not gonna matter how much money I made. It's not. What's gonna matter is gonna be on what life did I give to everybody around me.
There
And
you
that's what I
go.
tell people, like you can't look at what's currently happening to you as if it's the only thing that's going to happen to you. The smallest amounts of time, right? When bad things happen in 5 minutes, don't let it happen for 24 hours. And when I say that is like, yes, something can happen to you in 5 minutes, but you get the opportunity to change your mindset on how you feel about that situation because you still have 24 hours in a day. So like for me, do I go through things? Yes. Do we grieve? Of course.
Absolutely.
Everybody has a grieving period, right?
Right. Right.
But if you think I'm just over here sitting here saying, woe is me, nah, baby. Nah, baby. We don't move like that. We fight out here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm very thankful. I'm very blessed. I'm very, 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 very thankful that you guys have me on here. That's just my short story on who I am as a man. I hope I didn't keep you guys too long.
No, you good. You good.
But yeah, I'm Trey Tipton. It was nice getting a chance to tell my story.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story for sure
Absolutely.
and everything. So what we're going to do, I know we had some questions. We're probably going to pick like two just for, the sake of time and everything
Yeah.
like that. So I'll have you go first, ladies first.
Okay. So I'm looking to see which one I want to pick because you shared so much. And I feel like overarching theme is just like resilience and you building up your mental capacity to kind of just deal with the things that life was throwing out at you. And clearly you have such a huge calling on your life. I want to jump into how social work found you. You've been through so much in your life. You've overcame so much. what made you say, hey, I think social work would be a good field for me to explore and to study? Can you share with our audience a little bit about why you chose social work or possibly how social work chose you?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both, right? I chose social work because I wanted to understand my own mind, right? I didn't want to go to psych, but I wanted to go through social work because I wanted to see, like, okay, like, why did I think the way that I thought, right? And how many other people are out there that are like me? And when I say social work kind of chose me, it's like I've always been a helper. I've always been a person who wanted to be a hero. If you asked me back when I was 7 what my occupation would be at the age of 28, I'd have told you a superhero, right? So like it's always been innately in me. But when I realized that I couldn't, and this is me just being extremely honest, I realized it would be hard for me to be a social worker when I got a chance to really see case studies, right? And the reason why I say that is because, like I told you, I always wanted to be a superhero. So hearing some of the stories, seeing some of the things that social workers have to go through, it kills me to see that we go through so much as social workers, but get minimum pay for how hard we work, right? And that's why I feel like social workers are a lot like NFL players. Because like you work the hardest, you get put through the most, but you get paid the least, and you never ask for more pay. You're just thankful that you get a chance to save a life, right? Well, my heart gravitated towards those type of people because you shouldn't want to be glorified for helping people,
Yeah.
right? Like it should be something that's innate within you. God calls each individual to serve. I felt like social work was one of the ways where God was calling me to serve. And I still serve, right? I try to be able to help as many kids as possible to this day because I genuinely believe that God put me on this earth to be a superhero. So to answer your question, I feel like that yes, social work chose me, but I chose social work to not only understand me, but to also help others.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people come into the field because of their own lived experience and just wanting to be a light in the world. So thank you for sharing that.
And I'm going to ask you the big question. So, what is next for you in your journey?
I love that big question. Well, right now I'm currently on the Christian Coons podcast. I'm life coaching as well, and also run a company, Miracle Abatement Services. It's an asbestos company that I run with my father. But with that said, man, I'm traveling right now. I'm doing a lot of motivational speaking, and I'm still trying to chase that dream of changing the world, right? I want to be able to have that opportunity one day to be able to change a million lives, and I'm chasing it. Until that day comes, right? If God blesses me with that opportunity before I leave this earth, I'll be extremely thankful. But that's currently the goal that I'm chasing. And that's what I'm gonna do until the day I die is try to change a million lives. Whatever happens in between that, whatever occupation that comes along with that, I'm going with.
And there was a question that someone put in the chat, and I wanted to ask you this one. The question was, how old were you when your mom was in the hospital?
I was 15 years old. That was
Mm,
I grew up quick, as some people would say, right? I didn't tell everything in the story because certain parts of the story still have some trauma pain
Right,
to it,
right,
right?
right.
yeah.
But I was 15 years old when that happened, and it made me grow up fast because in that moment I started to really look at life like, okay, I got to do something fast, otherwise I'm not going to have an opportunity to really do it for my mom. And unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity, but it doesn't mean I'm still not going to do it. You know what I mean? So, um, I was 15 years old, and that was probably one of the hardest moments of my life, but it kind of prepared me for when she passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna add an extra question. Where can people follow you?
How can people
Uh,
support
Yeah.
LOVE and what are some accomplishments you've had and how can we, rally around you and the good work you're doing?
Currently, right now, LOVE is becoming Life Legacy. So currently running my 707 program through that. And I'm just trying to teach young men to be leaders in their communities through leadership and mental health. And the reason why I'm so focused on that is because as much as I want to change a million lives, the only way that that can happen is if you raise about 100,000 leaders, right? Because they're really gonna be the ones who makes it all those changes in their community. So I really want to be able to produce and be able to help those kids out. So if you ever want to donate to Life Legacies and the PA Goblins to help these kids out, we greatly appreciate it. You can find me at Tre Tip06 on Instagram and anywhere else. Uh, and then on TikTok, I am a TikTok dancer a little bit. I gotta give myself a little bit credit on that, just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. But I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. You can find me anywhere. But also, you can see me on podcasts such as the Athletic Aesthetic Podcast, as well as the Christian Coons Podcast, which is becoming the #1 sports podcast in Pittsburgh. So we're working hard out here. We're trying to make lives different and definitely trying to change lives.
Right.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So Trey, we thank you for allowing us to give, the time for you to share your story and also just share it to the world and everyone that's watching on here tonight. Just as a quick reminder for everybody, if you want to donate to Swag Awards, just go on the Swag Awards website, www.swagawards.com to give your donation, learn more about the Swag Awards. But tomorrow is the 5th annual Swag Awards at the Sheraton Hotel in Station Square. It's from 4 to 7:30. 4 o'clock, we will start with the networking event and then it go right into the ceremony. So again, for everybody out here, thank you for tuning in with us. Trey, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As
Thank you for
always,
having me.
and everything. And everybody just have a good rest of your evening and we'll see you tomorrow at the awards.
All right, y'all. You're checking out. Thanks for watching.
Peace.